we gave about a minute for everyone to join, and we are going to go ahead and kick off our webinar. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. This is Intro to Formatter, Text, Dates, and Times. We know you all have a lot you could be doing with your time right now, so we really do appreciate you spending time with us. Also, I really love to see that we have an international audience today. So we are excited to have you here. And I want to first start off, my name is Ernique Owens, and I'll be moderating today's event. But before we get started, I just want to go over a few housekeeping rules. First of all, this webinar will be recorded, and you all will get an email with the recording after the webinar. Next, all attendees are muted, but if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. If you put the questions in the chat box where you all have been putting where you guys are from, it will get lost due to the sheer volume of people on this call. So please put it in the Q&A box, and we'll have Andy and Cameron from our support team try their best to get to you during these calls. And if not, we will have plenty of time at the end for Lori to answer your questions at the end of the webinar. There will also be a survey at the end of the webinar, and we'd love if you could fill it out and give us your feedback so we can improve future webinars. And lastly, we're on social. So if you're live tweeting, please use the hashtag Zapier or at our Twitter handle at Zapier. Let's get started. Okay, I'd like to introduce you to our speaker today. We have Lori Roche here. Lori works on our support team, training new Zapians to do support, both our new support team and as well as everyone who does support through All Hands Support Initiative. Remember, again, you can ask all the questions you want in the Q&A panel at the bottom of your screen, and our team will save some time to get to you at the end of the webinar, and we'll try our best to get to as many questions as we can. And with that, I'm going to let Lori take it away. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks, Ernique, and welcome everyone to Intro to Formatter. I am Lori. I am one of our support trainers here at Zapier, and today we're going to take a look at how to take your Zapier game up a notch with our formatter. So before we get started, I'm going to do a quick agenda. So we're going to talk about what is Zapier, a quick recap of our terminology. We're going to look at what the formatter is, and then we're going to do a live demo, and then I will open up things for questions. So quickly, what is Zapier? Zapier is an automation platform that connects thousands of the most popular apps like Slack, MailChimp, Google Sheets, Salesforce. Honestly, you name the app, we probably integrate with it into automated workflows called Zaps. All right, so terminology of what we're going to talk about today. So when we talk about an app, this is a web service or an application that you're going to connect to Zapier. A Zap is our term for the automated workflows that you set up between your apps. And a trigger is the event that starts your Zap. So whatever the thing happens in your app that is going to start your Zap, that is your trigger. Next, we have an action. So an action is whatever the event is that your Zap performs after the trigger happens. So you can have one action, you could have multiple actions. Our Zaps will probably go up to about 99 actions safely. And next is a task. So a task is an action that is successfully completed by your Zap. So in terms of task usage, which is what our plans are based on, if your Zap has 5 action steps, all 5 complete successfully, that counts as 5 tasks every time your Zap runs. And finally, your Zap history is the place on your dashboard where you can see all of the actions that your Zaps have completed and all of the data that went through your Zaps. All right, so with that, let's jump in and talk about the formatter. So I'm not going to have time to talk about all of the functions in the formatter. There are a lot, and so we're going to focus on just 2 today. But I also want to talk about some of the available options that we're not going to cover today, or that we may not cover in a future webinar. So one of the other things I wanted to mention is that our amazing content team created a cheat sheet of using the formatter and a lot of the help docs that we're going to look at today. And that'll go out with the recording of the webinar when that gets sent tomorrow. All right, so one of the key things that I want to sort of remind you about using a formatter is a formatter step needs to go before the action step where you want the formatted text to go. So we have your trigger step, we format that text, we do all the things, and then we take the output of the formatter step and we send that to your action step. And that makes sure that your text gets formatted the way you want it, and it shows up in the app the way it needs to be after it's been formatted. All right, so the formatter. basic question, what can the formatter do? So we have 4 main categories with our formatter. With our text option, we have over 20 options of editing text, things like capitalizing, truncate, split, replace, extract email addresses, phone numbers. You can even give yourself a superhero name, and that's always a lot of fun. Next is dates and time. So we can change dates into a new format, or we can add or subtract time. Within the numbers option, you can format your numbers, your currencies, phone numbers. You can also do math, which is always very helpful. And finally, our utilities option. This is anywhere from playing with line items, changing, looking at values, returning values from other lists, and along those lines. Sorry. So today, I'm going to focus on the first two, text and dates and times. So within our demo, I want to show sort of 3 of the options, and then we're going to go over to a demo and sort of see how these work within a Zap, sorry. So the first is going to be remove HTML tag. So let's say we're getting HTML in with our text when we get it from our trigger action, but our action app isn't able to handle that HTML. So we can run this through the formatter, get rid of all that HTML, and then send just your text onto your action step. Next option we're going to look at in this first app is replace. So let's say there's a word in the text that you're coming, or characters, or something that you want to have it display a different way. We can use the replace option to switch that out and send the new text that way. And finally, we're going to look at truncate. So let's say you have a lot of text and you can only send a little bit of text. Truncate will let you determine how much of that text goes and what part of that text is going to go through. So the first app we're going to look at is one where I have a Zap that triggers every time I put a new post on my blog, and then I want to tweet about it, and I want to send it to Facebook. So we've got this going to Facebook, and then we also have it going to Twitter. However, oops, let's go back there. We're going to switch over to the demo. So my first app is all here. We've got exactly as we said, we're going to trigger off a new post in WordPress. We're going to create a page post in Facebook pages. We're going to create a tweet in Twitter. Now, when I ran this morning, just a little Zapier magic, so we've got this all ready for you. When I actually sent this out, you can see that on my blog, got my next excerpt. It's all pretty. It's all HTML and colored the way I want it to. However, when I sent this on to Facebook, you can see all that pretty HTML that looks so nice on my blog doesn't look so great when it gets to Facebook. Not the coolest. We've got this big, picture down here with this big gray box taking a lot of stuff going on. We've got all this HTML code. It just does not look as pretty. And then when we get to Twitter, same thing. All that HTML is still hanging out there. Our picture, got cut off. It is not pretty. And I like it pretty. I like control. So we're going to take our Zap and we're just going to make it a lot better and have more control over what shows up. So the first thing we want to do is we want to get rid of all those HTML tags. So I've just added a step in between my WordPress and my Facebook steps. And we're going to go ahead and click our formatter. And I want to choose text. So let's go ahead, continue. And now we've chosen text, we get one of the options. And so like I said, we have about 20 options. I'm going to choose the remove HTML tags. And so here we're just saying, where is the code, what input field from our trigger step has that HTML that we want to strip out? So I know it's coming in my post excerpt. So let's go ahead and choose that. And when I hit continue, Zapier is going to do all the magic, get rid of all of that HTML and turn it into a much prettier paragraph. Lovely. So now we're sending something a little bit better when we go on to Facebook and to Twitter. One of the things you'll also notice here is this keep reading, right? So there's a hard return, there's this keep reading text. I don't necessarily want that. I mean, it works fine when we have it linking to my blog, right? It's going to a link. Just that keep reading, it's kind of weird. So we're going to take another formatter step. We're going to add in the replace. So again, click our format option, choose text, hit continue. And again, we're going to choose another transform. In this case, we're going to do replace. And so here what I want to do is instead of replacing that text in my original blog post, in my original excerpt from my step 1, I actually want to replace it in my formatted text from step 2, where I got rid of all those HTML tags. So now we're going to take that HTML stripped out text, and we're also going to change it with the replace. So if I were to just replace this keep reading text, it's sort of on a new space. So if, let's say I want to switch it out with like ellipses, we're going to have the text, and then right at the bottom, all floating there by itself is just 3 dots. And that's going to be a little bizarre. So I'm also going to strip out that new line. And so one of the things you'll see here, if like, let's say we were looking for a space, there's this extra characters. And so this help doc right here is really going to be super helpful for you in all of the options that you can have that'll show basically characters that are not an actual character on your keyboard, right? So you can't have a character that is a tab or a new line or a hard return. So for that, we use these texts. So in this case, I want to use this new line code. And we're just going to say, look for new line and then keep reading. Excuse me. Oh, and then we want to replace it with our ellipses. 1, 2, 3. And let's go ahead and continue. And when we test that out, you can see that the keep reading is gone and we have our ellipses in place. So that's what we're going to go ahead and send on to Facebook. So let's go on to our Facebook page. Now, the other thing that I didn't particularly love in the Facebook post was that the link that came through and it had this big old gray. So I just want a bigger feature of that picture. So instead of using, not this one, instead of using the create page post, I'm actually going to switch this to create page photo. Because now I determine what the picture is going to look like, and I determine what my text is going to look like. So we're going to go ahead and continue. We'll set this all up. Add this to the right page. And so now I can map the thumbnail from my post, which is the book cover. And I can put in all of the stuff I want to put in. So let's say we put in the title, give it a new line. And instead of putting in, again, the excerpt from my WordPress step, I'm going to use this output that came into our step 3, which is where we replace the keep reading in our stripped out HTML tags text. And this is what we're going to send. And then finally, let's throw in a link, because obviously the point of putting this on Facebook is to make sure that we're driving traffic back to our blogs. So we'll put that in as well. So let's go ahead and continue, and we'll test this out. And that went to Facebook. So when we refresh over here, you can see this looks way prettier, right? We've got no HTML. We have a nice big link. We have a huge image of the book cover, really promoting Mike Myers. And then voila, that looks so much better. And look, just a couple of steps and that made that happen. So the last thing we want to do here is when we go on to Twitter, we know that Twitter has a 280 character limit. Right, so the problem is if you count the characters in all of this information here, this is way more than 280. It's about 350 right now. So we want to, again, make sure that we're not sending more information to Twitter than Twitter can handle, because we don't want Twitter to come back and be like, yeah, no, you can't do that. That's too much text. Stop. And either it cuts it off or we hit an error. So we're going to use our last formatter step for this one. We can do it between the Facebook and the Twitter step, because we want the whole excerpt to go to Facebook. We just want part of it to go to Twitter. So again, let's choose our formatter. And again, we're going to go to the text. And in this case, our transform is going to be the truncate option. Oops, truncate, there we go. All right, so again, let's stick with that same formatted text, right? There's no sense sending the early HTML text or with the keep reading. We're just going to send our formatted last option. So we'll use that as our input. And here we can choose some more settings about what we're going to do with that truncated text. So max length, right? This is how long we want the text to be. So we know with a 280 character limit, let's say about 35 characters are our shortened link, which we're going to let the Twitter app do for us. So let's say 35 characters. So we'll add 5 for a little bit of wiggle room. Let's say 240. So we don't want this to go more than 240 characters. Now, the next thing we can do is skip characters. So let's say we don't want it to start right at the very beginning. So you'll see that all of the posts on my blog start with the words review. So review, REVIEW, and a colon and a space. So we're looking at 8 characters right there. So let's pull out 8 characters and have it start after that review text. And finally, do we want an ellipses? I'm obsessed with ellipses. Of course, we want an ellipses. I love them. So let's go ahead and hit continue. And we can see here that we're putting in, oh, you know what? I did this wrong. My apologies. We forgot the title. Got to have a title, otherwise people don't know what they're looking at. All right, let's try that again. That makes a bit more sense. So yes, we get rid of our review text, which is where our skip characters are. We're going to start right at the title and then shorten this down to 240 characters. So let's go ahead and set that up. All right, now we can see we have our title, we have our text, and we have our ellipses, and it's nice and short and it'll fit into our tweet. Wonderful. So let's go ahead and send that. So we're going to get rid of some of this extra stuff. We're going to get rid of, we're going to keep the link because again, driving traffic to our actual blog, but we're going to use this excerpted text with our title and the excerpt and our link, which we will keep this on, shorten the URLs by Twitter. So Twitter will turn it into a lovely little shortened URL. And we're also going to send the image because why not? It's a cool image and it is, you know, it's a book review. We want to make sure people know what book we're reviewing. So let's go ahead and hit continue. And let's test that. And when we get to, oh, dang, and we got a duplicate tweet because I tested this yesterday. Oh, goodness. All right. So just imagine with me that this is much prettier without the HTML and without the review. And I will remember for the next time not to send it and test it before we start this. All right, let us go back and look at some more cool stuff. All right, so another thing that we want to look at, another function within the formatter is split text. So this is really helpful when information comes in one field, but we need to send it out into multiple fields. So we can designate a specified separator. It could be a space, it could be a comma, a pipe, it could even be like words in your text. And we'll say every time we see this in our text, split at this option. So if you have 10 commas, we will split 10 times on each of those commas. Another option I want to look at is the default value. So default value is really helpful if your action app has required fields, but those fields aren't filled out in your trigger step, right? Because then we don't have information to send. The app is going, well, hey, I really need something here. And then it hits an error. So what default value does is it says, okay, is there something in that field? If there is, we'll send that on. If there's not, we'll put in some other default text to make sure that we don't hit an error and the text goes through. And finally, we're going to play with a little bit of our date time option, and we're going to format the look of our date to make sure that it works with our action app. So let's go back to our demo and a new Zap. And so this app, what we're going to do is we have a lead generating form, which was created in Google Forms. And you can see my form here. I'm collecting, name, phone, email, and birthday. And we're going to add the person as a new subscriber in MailChimp. So a couple of things we're going to notice here. So one, we only have the one name. And let's fill this out, get this running through. So we're going to have Jenny. And we all know that Jenny's phone number is 867-5309. Oops. Also, let me actually set that up as a proper phone number. There we go. We're going to give Jenny an email. And we'll give Jenny a birthday. Now, one of the things you're going to notice here is that the way Google is collecting this birthday is year, month, day, which is a little unusual. Usually it's different. It's day, month, year, or month, day, year. And again, depending on the part of the world that you're in, sometimes it's month, day, sometimes it's day, month. And I have one of those birthdays that is, it could be either, right? I was born on November 8th, which depending on how that text comes through, you could think it was August 11th. But I was not born in August, I was born in November. All right, so if we send through my birthday, and let's just go back in time a few years, we'll pretend that I was born in 2010, and we'll select November 8th. And we're going to send that through as Jenny's birthday. Great, and so we should have that now sitting in our, let's pull that in, perfect. Let's go this, and we can see Jenny Joseph, there's her phone number, her email, and her birthday of 8/11/2010. But we know that this is depending, if you are a month day person versus a day month person, that this is November 8th, not August 11th. So we want to make sure that goes through properly to MailChimp. So let's take a look at our MailChimp step. So a few things we'll notice. Number one, this subscriber email field is a required field, which means if the person doesn't fill out that email address in the form, this is going to break because MailChimp is going to be like, well, I needed that and you didn't have it, so we're not going to run. And we definitely don't want to send errors, because one of the things that Zapier does, if your Zap hits an error 90% of the time, it's going to get shut off because there's too many errors. So we want to make sure that we're always sending something in that email field. So let's go ahead and we're going to set up the default value. So again, adding our step, we're going to add this formatter. And again, we're going to work out of text. And our transform this time is going to be our default value. And so again, our input is going to be the email field. So what's going to happen, like I said, is it's going to look for this field. If there's text here, it'll just pass that along in our output. If there's not, we're going to have it put in something else. So I'm actually going to send my own email address in here, because one of the cool things about what we're doing with MailChimp is this is an add update subscriber, which means that if the subscriber already exists, it's not going to send an error saying, nope, we can't add them again. It's just going to update their information. So the good thing is we're going to have just that one email address will just keep getting updated. Now, it's not the great for your lead gen, but unfortunately, we wouldn't have been able to send anything through without that email address anyway. So at least this way it keeps your Zap up and running. So let us go ahead and we're going to map that. Instead of sending our email from the form, we're going to send the output from our default value, which I did not test. So you always want to run your tests to make sure that you've got stuff to send through. Perfect. Now you can see that Jenny's email came through because that's what came from the Google form. If we didn't have an email, you would see my email address here. All right, so the next thing we have here is we have a first name and a last name field, but only one field coming from Google Forms, which is the full name, Jenny Joseph. So that's a little awkward. And also, you know, if I'm going to be sending out personalized emails through MailChimp, I'm not going to be like, hey, Jenny Joseph. I want to just be like, hi, Jenny, you know, be all conversational and very friendly with my subscribers. So we want to split this Jenny Joseph into two pieces. So we have a first name and we have a last name. So let's go ahead and add one more formatter step here. And again, we're going to grab the text. And we are going to go with our split text. Oops, split. There we go. All right. And again, so our input is going to be our name. And here we need to determine what the separator is. So like I said, you can separate on one character, on multiple characters. You can split on a hard return, on a space, on a comma, anything. And again, this help doc right here is going to give you a list of all of the characters that you can use that are not characters on your keyboard. So in this case, I'm all right splitting on a space. So I can either leave this alone and let it go with the default, which is space, or I can just be 100% sure and put that code in myself. And now here comes the other interesting thing about this particular function is the segment index. A little confusing in the term there, but what it basically means is what part of the split are we going to return and send out of this particular step? So we can send part of it, or we can send all of it. And what part of it we can also sort of specify. We could do the first one, we could do the second one, we could do the last one, or we could do the second to last one. Or if we need everything, we have two options to send all of the fields. So one is all as line items, and the other is all as separate fields. So the only time that you're going to want to choose all as line items is if the app that you're sending to, if your action app has line item support. This is really helpful in apps like invoices or anywhere where you have multiple items that you want to send through, and it can work with those. So if you are not 100% sure that your action app has line item support, let's stick with the all as separate fields. And what that's going to give us is all of the fields. Let's go ahead and test that. And you can see here we have item 1 and item 2. So the first part will always show in item 1. The second part will always show in item 2. And so now when we get to our MailChimp setup, instead of having the full name go in the first and last, which would be a little weird, we can send just the first name in the first name field and just the last name in our last name field. Perfect. So, you know, our subscribers are looking a little better, a little easier to work with. So one last thing that we're going to notice here is our birthday. So we're sending the birthday. However, if I were to test this exactly as is, and I'm just going to show you what's going to happen when I run this test, is I'm going to get an error, right? MailChimp is like, hey, you know what? Something you're sending us is wrong. We can't work with this. And the field that it's got a problem with is my birthday field because it only wants the month and the day. And we are sending day, month, year. So MailChimp, not super happy. So let's go ahead and we're going to add one last formatter step. This time we're going to choose date and time instead of text. And in this case, we don't want to change the birthday, right? My birthday was November 8th. We don't need to be like November 11th or November 5th. It is the 8th. So we're just going to change the format of the date. So our input is going to be our date coming from our Google form. Let's choose birthday. And then we want to choose what we want it to look like. So you're going to see two options. Actually, before I show that, take a look at this help doc right here, which will look at all the possible combinations, all of the codes for how you want that text to appear. So if you want the full month written out, MMMM. If you want just the number of the month, we want just M. Same with the day, same with day of the week, with hour, all of these things. So we know that MailChimp wants the right? They wants the 01 or 11, and it wants the DD, the 01 or 30 or 31, whatever it is. So we are going to tell the formatter to do exactly that. Now, a lot of these are filled out already. We can choose these as an option, but the one we want is not here. So if we go ahead and switch to custom, we can put in any of those codes and have that show up. So we want MM/DD. Now we can leave the time zones alone, but unless that was something you wanted to do. If you wanted to change, let's say you have people in different time zones, you want to make sure that the information that goes through is in your own time zone, we can set that. The other thing I want to do is put in the from format. Because Zapier is based out of in North America, we use the month, day, day. But you can see here, this is sending in day, day, month, month. So we want to make sure that we're avoiding any possible confusion. And we're going to specify that this is coming through as day, day, month, month, and not month, day, day. So we're going to choose the one of how we're getting that information to make sure that we are 100% putting out what the exact date that we're putting in. And we're going to run that test. And you can see we're sending to MailChimp November 8th, which is when my birthday is. So yay. All right, let us send that in our setup. So again, we're going to get rid of what's coming from Google Forms, and we're going to put in our formatted information. And now when we run our test with MailChimp, we should have our lovely success. Ta-da! Yes. All right. So let us take a look at one last thing. So, I forgot to show you the Zap that we just built. So there's the Zap that we just built. No, I went the wrong way. There we go. This one. All right, so one last app that I want to look at is, again, one of the other options with the date and time and how we can manipulate that time. So let's say we want to set a time in the future, or we want to trigger before an event happens. We have a lot of customers who write in and they're like, hey, I want to send a reminder 3 days before our appointment. How do I make that happen? So we can use the formatter to create that math of what is 4 days before or 3 days after or a month after or whatever it is from the date that I have. So this is where we would use that add subtract time formatter step. So in this app we're going to build, we're going to take our saved messages in Slack, because you're probably using a lot of Slack as we're all staying at home and communicating with our coworkers via Slack. We want to save messages that are important and that you need to add to your to-do list. So with this app, we're going to save that message and we want to send it on to our to-do list. So what we're going to do is add our formatter to change the due date, because we don't necessarily want the due date to be right this second. Set it in the future, and then add that to our to-do option, our to-do list. So let us take a look at this app. So we're starting with save message in Slack. We're going to add this task to TickTick. So one of the things you'll notice here when I send this through is I've set it up, the save message from who the message came from. We've got the text of the message. We should probably add a link to the message itself because otherwise you'll be really confused. And then we have a due date. Now, one of the things you'll notice here is that this message was created September 2020. Now, if I send that to my to-do list, I'm going to be really, really late, right? Because that was 6 months ago. So we want to play with that time a little bit. And even if we add 3 days, that's still going to be September 18th of 2020, which again is a long time ago. So we're going to play with that as well. So let us add one more formatter step. So formatter, we chose the date and time. And we're going to do our last transform step, which is add subtract time. So if we were to put in the date that we got from our saved message in Slack, which is really the only date that we're getting, that we can see in our message here, is when it was created, which is not at all helpful for us in this particular case, right? Because we wanted 3 days from today, not 3 days from September 15th. So I want to show you just one more little sort of Zapier magic tool. And it's this code here. So 2 squiggly brackets, zap, meta, human now, and close those 2 squiggly brackets. And what that code is going to do is it's going to say, put in the time that is exactly now when this runs. So whatever the exact time is, when we save it, that's the time that we're going to manipulate, as opposed to the time that the message was created. So here we can see all of the ways that we can manipulate that time and what the structure is going to be. So we could do, plus 8 hours, we could do plus 1 month, minus 2 days. Any of these will work in this expression. So we want to go, let's do 3 days in the future. So plus 3 days. And then we want to decide what our output format is. So depending on the output app, it could be you want like the full month and time. It could be just the month and the day, however you want that format to be. So again, I'm going to go with a basic, just the month and the day and the year. We don't need to change the from because we'll figure it out. This is our code. We're going to know what that is. So let's go ahead and continue. And what we should see when we test this, 3 days from today is March 25th. The output is March 28th, 2021. Awesome. So let's go ahead to tick, and we're going to set that up and change our due date from September 15th, or when our Slack message was created. And we're going to output this to 3 days from today. And then if we really want to have a bit of fun with it, we could say, I want it to happen at 11 o'clock in the morning. And send that on to tick. And when we run that test, you'll see that our due date was now March 28th, and this will show up right here, March 28th at 11 a.m., which is exactly what we wanted to have happen. All right, and that is it. Those are the things that I wanted to show you today. So now you have all this extra, formatting goodness that you can add to your Zaps and make them so much better. So I want to ask you a question. So what I want to say is there a Zap in your account, in your Zap toolbox, that a formatter can make it 1,000,000 times better? And so what I want you to do is go to your Zaps, see where a formatter can make it so much better, and add that right now while all this formatting goodness is in your head and you're sort of got that ready to go. And then if you want to share it with us, whether you tweet it or you send it on Instagram, I don't think we take Owl Post yet, but if you can send it on Owl Post, that would be really cool. But we want to see it. We want to know about it. And with that, I'm going to wrap up. And thank you so much for hanging out with me while we play with our formatter. And I'm going to pass things on back to Erinique, and we will open it up for a Q&A. Thanks again.
Thanks, Lori. That was so awesome. We got a lot of questions during the webinar, and let's go ahead and dive in. So starting with the first question. So is there a way I can request for an app, trigger type, or action to be added to Zapier? Can webhooks be used as a workaround?
So yes to both those questions. So yes, we have a very robust feature request toolbox where we record all of the things that people ask. We reach out to partners or whoever developed the app and be like, hey, we really want to see this thing. Our customers really want to see this thing, and let them know that this is something we want. So definitely write into our support team. Let us know what app it is, what the trigger is, what the action is that you want to see, and we will see what we can do about getting that added. We don't necessarily, we can't guarantee that it will be added, but we will definitely do everything we can to make sure that the right people know that it is a thing that you want. In terms of webhooks, yes, webhooks is a great workaround for a lot of things. A lot of that is dependent on is there an API in the app that you want to connect? The other option, the other sort of thing is that functionality in their API? And have they set up their API in a way that we could create a webhook? That is there a way to send information from that app to a webhook that it'll get to us? Is there a way for us to send information to a webhook that'll get to the app? So there is actually a really good blog post on our blog. Let's see, yep, here we go. This blog post goes through some of the ways that you could use webhooks, but also some of the other things that you can do. And bear with me a second, I will send this to our chat. Sorry, too many windows open. Which would be really helpful for anybody who wants to do stuff that we don't necessarily have yet.
Got it. That was a very detailed answer. Okay, next question. Does Zapier expose an API to retrieve data sent to a Zap?
I'm not sure. What do you mean by expose? I mean, all of our information is sent via an API. Is it exposed anywhere? Not really. I mean, that it's not like there's a highway that you can read that data as it's traveling. We do have really strong encryption to make sure that your data is safe with us.
Great. That is good to know. Okay. So we got another question. Is each format step a task?
Yes. Yes. So for usage purposes, every time there's a successful action, this counts as a task. So when we looked at some of those where we added 3 formatter steps, if all of those complete, then yes, each of those would be a separate task.
Okay, great. So this person asked, I have many clients who need assistance getting up a Zap. What is the best way to get help with Zapier?
Zapier support. Zapier support rocks. We have an amazing team of really, really great people, very, very smart people. Oh my gosh, who are just available to help you. Now that said, we have our community where a lot of our experts and a lot of our Zapier users are hanging out. So definitely check out the community and hang out there and ask your questions. If you're at a point where you're like, you know what, I don't want to do it. I want somebody else to do it for me. Just get it off my plate. We do have our Zapier experts database where you can get matched with an excerpt and hire somebody to do all the work for you. But if you really just want help or you want to learn, by all means, reach out to us in support. Talk to me or to Cameron, to Andy, or any of the other, many people we have on our team who are here to help.
Yes, I can attest to that. That Zapier support does rock, and we have a couple of people agreeing in the chat. Okay, another question that we got, does Zapier have an unlimited task plan? If so, how much does it cost?
We do not. We do not have unlimited tasks. Even our company's plans have limits, but I believe those limits are like super high. Okay. So no, because of how our plans are structured, each plan has its own set number of tasks that are included.
Okay. Good to know. So we have another question. If I have a field with 3 names that I need to do separate, like Sue, Ellen, Smith, how could I handle that?
All right. So so if we go back and actually, you know what, let's go back to the demo and I want to show you that because best way to see it is to see it, right? So which one is this? This is default value. Let's grab the split one. Here we go. So let's say we're sending a bunch of things, right? We want Jenny, Joseph, and gosh, I'm on a J kick right here, but we'll do like Jennifer and Bob, right? So we're sending through Jenny, Joseph, Jennifer, Bob. So when we hit that continue, because we chose, sorry, I'm go back for a second. because we chose all as separate fields, when this comes out, we will have Jenny, Joseph, Jennifer, and Bob all on 4 separate fields. So as many splits as you have, that's how many returns you're going to get. And I have a crazy Zap that runs like based on the meeting that I'm on, and it sends it actually goes to a lookup table, and it outputs a code for the scene of lights in my office, a Zap, like an emoji for Slack, and a Slack status, and also the project in toggle that particular meeting should go under. And then it splits out all the 4 of those things, and I can put them into different places. So I can set my lights, and I can set my Slack, and I can add to my toggle, and it all is done through one split. So yes, you can have as many splits as you need.
Wow, we might just have to do a demo on that one.
I've always said I just need an AMA to show off like all the crazy Zaps that I've built, because some of them are a little weird, but I have a lot of fun building them.
Yes, I'm sure a lot of people would love to see that. All right, jumping to the next question. Is there a website for where I can view the other trainings? There was a Zapier 101 and a Zapier 102. That was extremely helpful.
There was, and you know what? I don't think I have that URL saved just yet. Oops.
Yeah, I actually think
Is it gozapier.com/webinars? I feel like that might not be it, but
yeah, I actually
yeah, that's not
got
it. I did see a conversation that we're going to be adding that URL to the email that goes out with the recording and the cheat sheet. Thank you to somebody in the lovely chat who just posted that, because those will work. Yes, here we go. Grab that. Go.zapier.com webinars on demand, and you can watch all of our previous webinars, and so you can see all of the things that we've done, all the, our small business ones, and you can do our intro, Zapier 101 and 102, spotlight on our customers. These are all here where you can rewatch them and sort of still keep on that learning. So yes.
Yes, this was fresh off the press. I think we just sent an email about this. So
yes, it launched like 2 days ago. So excellent timing with that question.
Very, very exciting. Okay, split text. Can we do, for example, find the first space and split, but ignore other spaces after if there are more?
No, so gosh, so you can't, if you say split on space, it'll split on all of the spaces. So in that case, you might want to add in extra characters. So let's say you're trying to split out like a bunch of text, and you want only the text after this other text. As long as that's consistent, you can split on multiple characters, right? So let's say I wanted to split on with our blog one, right? The blog Zap that we looked at, where we wanted to get rid of that review text. So we could create a formatter. I'm just going to demo this because that's probably the easiest way to show you. So let's say we wanted to take that text. Split, right? Split text, yes. And we want to take out that title, and we want to get rid of that review : space. But we don't want to split if this was a longer title. Maybe I can pull a different post in here that is not such a short title. It's just going to grab the one, I think. Oh, maybe. Yes, there we go. Perfect. Yeah. So you can see here, review : the way he loved me. So when we run this one, this is what I wanted. Yeah, perfect. So if we were to split on the review : and that space, right? And our segment indexes, let's say we want second, right? We want to skip this stuff and we want everything after it. When we run that, it'll only split on this exact text, and we should get out just the title, which is The Way He Loved Me.
Nice. Nice. I definitely think people appreciate the demos on this. We may want to stay in here. We have another question. If I have a date field, how do I filter only continue if the date is in the past? Is that done using Formatter?
Actually, no. So not in the Formatter. We can do that with a filter. So let's go back to this Zap here, which was the one where we changed the date. So let's say we want to we're going to add a filter here that says we only want to continue if that message happened before right now. now. I think, yes, you can. So you could literally put that Zap MetaHuman Now code right into here, and that'll run right now. And so we only want to continue if that date, where's my date, is before, yep, date time before this time. And so when we test that out, we know that September was definitely before right this minute, and we can see that it worked. So we can stop the Zap from running if it's later than or after a specific time.
Great. Thank you, Lori. We do have another question here. I'm curious if there is a way to shorten a lengthy URL using a shortener such as Bitly or another app. We have Gravity Forms to Salesforce workflow that sometimes errors out because Salesforce has 255 character limit on their URL field type.
So in fact, we have a whole shortened URL app, built-in app in Zapier that will do it for you. So it's not Bitly or Owly or any of the others, but it is actually zpr.io. So we can take a link. Let's go ahead and grab that permalink from Slack because we're here and why not? So we're going to grab that one and we will just run it through the URL and we will get instead this lovely zpr.io URL. I will say I actually have a Zap that uses the Zapier Chrome extension. I put in a link. I put in sort of what the link is. It will shorten it, send it to me as Slack, both the old link and the shortened link, and then put it in a Google Sheet so I can track all of my shortened links. So here's another crazy Zap that I've built that will do this stuff for you.
Nice. You got a big thank you in the chat from the person that asked that question. So we have a few more questions that we're going to get to. So I haven't seen a way to test multiple steps at one time. Instead, you have to test each prior in order to test the current step. Will there be a functionality added at some point?
That is an excellent question. I can certainly pass that on to our Zapier editor team and let them know that is a thing you'd like to see. I would recommend, just because, just to make sure we can associate with you and your email address, write in support and ask that question, and we'll get you through our feedback loop and make sure that we're able to let you know if it is a thing that we can have happen.
Great. Okay, we have a couple more. Does Zapier have an API that I can call?
No.
Okay.
So yeah, we have like an API of like all of the apps we integrate with for our partners, but we don't have a specific API that is public that you can access at the moment. However, I am going to sort of shout out another Zapier built-in tool. I know this is supposed to be Formatter, but you got me going. And that is, oh, my caps lock keeps wanting to turn on. Oh, wrong one. Hold on. Let me switch persons here. Chrome searches are honestly the best thing in the world. So this is the Zapier Manager. All right, so our Zapier Manager has a bunch of triggers and actions and searches that you can do of things that happen in your Zapier account. So you can trigger if your Zap gets turned off, or if you have a Zap that hits an error, or if you want to know about a new app that's being added to Zapier, or you want to make sure you get your invoice. All of these things that you can trigger on and make Zaps to notify yourself to make sure that you are getting notified immediately when things are happening and you're staying in the loop to stay on top of your account.
Awesome. All right. I think we just might have one more. Is there any way to edit a Zap without turning it off first? I often want to tinker with my Zaps, but I have to wait until early morning, late night so that I'm not deactivating in the middle of the workday.
Yes. So right now, no. Again, send that feedback if it's something you really want to see. The reason that we do this, and I think it's really important, is if you start making changes and the Zap runs while you're working on it, then you might have things that break or things that don't go through in the way that you want them to. So really, it's to protect you and your data, to make sure it goes through the Zap as you want it to. So which is why we turn these off while you're working on it. If you've got to make like huge major changes, what I would actually recommend is copy the Zap and make your changes in the copy while leaving your original turned on. And then when the copy is ready to go, switch, right? So turn off the old, turn on the new, and that way you have no downtime on your Zap. Nothing's lost, and you still have your changes out there into the world.
Got it. Okay, I think this might be our last question if you're up for one more.
Bring it on.
If you have a catch webhook where you catch, for example, an order as JSON with line items, can the formatter be used to format the line items so they can be used as line items in a post web hook to get the order to another system? Let me know if you got that question.
I think I sort of get what you're asking. So line items and the formatter is sort of like a part 3 of the series. So yes, if is assuming that the marketing team lets me keep doing these, that is something I would like to do a webinar about. So yes, we do have all sorts of line item toys with the utilities function of the formatter that we can take straight text and turn it into line items. We can take line items, turn it into text. And then have that in a better format, or a format that works better with whatever app you're sending to. So assume yes. If you run into trouble, again, write into support, and we would be happy to help you. I know you said this was the last question. I'm sort of eyeing down the chat, and I very quickly asked somebody who wanted to talk about paths. We cover those in Zapier 102. So if you missed that, definitely go check out our Zapier webinars page and check out the Zapier 102 where I did cover paths and how to use those.
Awesome. Okay. Is there any other questions you see in the chat? If not, we are probably going to wrap up.
Yeah, the only it's very fast. I only got like the last question. Somebody's like, is there a formatter 301? That is not up to me. Let's say it's mentally written in my head. So if I get the chance to build it, it will come.
Great. All right, with that, it looks like we are going to wrap. We just want to thank you all for your questions. Of course, before we sign off, a reminder that we'll be sending a follow-up email with the webinar recording and other resources that you can use to automate your workflows with Zapier. And I'd like to give a big thank you to Lori again for an amazing webinar, and thank you all for joining. Don't forget to build your own formatter Zap and share it with us via Twitter by tagging Zapier or adding Zapier. Again, we want to thank you all for joining, and we hope this was helpful, and we will see you at the next webinar.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone.